Welcome to SVG-TV News for Monday, June 7th, 2021. I am Rochelle Batiste with the details. Many houses in the red zone were damaged by the eruption of La Soufrière volcano, and the government has been identifying lands for those who wish to be relocated. Calling in on NBC Radio this morning from Cuba, Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves said that damage assessments of homes are in the early stages and that some lands to be made available to affected residents will still be in the northern part of the island.
There will be lands, we'll be looking for lands inside of North Windward itself and lands outside of North Windward. Because let's understand this, there are lands in North Windward which are safe. You see where I'm coming from? Because I'm not of the school, and the government is not of the school, and I don't think the country and the people themselves in North Windward, not of the Dry River, would accept that all you must have up there is just the agriculture and animal husbandry and fishing, and people just go in and come out now.
The Prime Minister identified Sandy Bay as one of the communities where lands will be made available, but noted that it will have to be in keeping with safety measures.
There may be an extended family living in one house. There is the mother and father, and might have that they will have a son or a daughter who have their boyfriend or girlfriend or partner living in the house with one child or two children. Such a person may feel that they should take advantage or use the opportunity to see if they can get a piece of land and to get government help.
The Prime Minister said assessments have already been done based on damage seen on the outside of some structures, noting that more than 180 homes will require assistance. The Prime Minister explained who and how persons may qualify under the different categories.
Those who have clear and obvious need that their house has to be broken down and moved from there and built elsewhere, or it's not broken down. But then there are others in this other category I'm talking about. There's something may or may not be wrong with the house, but it has an extended family, but that extended family now wants to be separated. And there are different levels of damage which you will have. So the assessment has to be done. But of course, as always, government is not a continuing university seminar, so you can't be doing assessment. You have to do a reasonable assessment and you start to do something.
Member of the SVG Chamber of Industry and Commerce and social commentator Stephen Joachim says the government needs to give strong consideration to rebuild in some communities in the red zone. As a panelist on SVG-TV's Viewpoint program last evening, Joachim explains the reason for his position, noting that in recent times, every disaster to hit SVG always has a negative impact on the people and houses, particularly in the Sandy Bay area.
Sandy Bay should not exist as a village. It is every disaster we have, we see it keeps happening. It hits the same places over and over again, and we keep seeing people rebuilding. It's not just in Wilson, the Grenadines. People will remember Hurricane Katrina back in 10 or 12 years ago now, when it hit New Orleans. There's a part of New Orleans that's basically below sea level. They built a whole pile of levees to keep the water back. Of course, when Hurricane Katrina came and broke the levees, what did the United States government do? They decided they were going to rebuild. Maybe you don't rebuild. Maybe at some point you have to be realistic as to where human beings are supposed to live. All right, we are a special type of animal. We think that we control the environment, and we may be able to destroy it, but we're not so good at controlling it, I don't think. And we need to start there, I think, to say, guys, what are we doing? Let's not just automatically put on our hats and run to rebuild again.
Executive Director of the SVG Developmental Fund, Louise Mitchell, also shared her views on rebuilding or relocating persons in the red zone. She is of the view that the red zone should not be completely abandoned because of its historic and heritage attachment to the country and people. However, she thinks that residents should not be allowed to live close to riverbeds.
Cannot live near a river. You just cannot. And the government it's a crime to me for government to allow somebody to live within a certain proximity to a river, because it's making and institutionalizing poverty. And if you're listening to me tonight and you have a house by a river, I'm begging you, ask the government for help. Say, I want to relocate because I want my children to have a house that's not going to be washed away in 20 years. Don't try and go back there. Ask for help to go somewhere else. Now is the time to do that. You know, don't go back and do the same thing that you've done before. So people have to understand that the zoning is not about being harsh. It's about really protecting their future.
Mitchell said zoning of the red zone should be very strict and that the government should put the people first and sit down with them to explain the dangers of building their homes in the river valleys.
Really sit with people and take time with them and explain. We want the best for you when we say we don't want you to build in the riverbed. You know, and you have to think about the best interests of the people, and their discipline has to be reintroduced into St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We have lost discipline in so many areas of life. There's no proper zoning, and the zoning is critical to save lives. So there has to be a national inclusive discussion, as Honorable Fitz-Bramble was saying. The discussion has to be inclusive, but it has to also be quite firm, because this is about saving lives. The zoning that's needed and the introduction of building standards, it's to save lives. St. Vincent has not as yet had a totally catastrophic flood. That is probably coming and ahead of us still. So people who live in river beds, it has to stop.
Meanwhile, Mitchell said the country is experiencing a repeat of history, not only with crisis upon crisis, but economic hardship triggered by the COVID-19 pandemic, the dengue fever outbreak, flooding, the collapse of the tourism sector, and the recent volcanic eruption, which has displaced thousands of intentions. Mitchell spoke of the collapse of the sugar industry, the volcano eruption in 1902, and other disasters, noting that if the country should get through these times, policymakers, stakeholders, and all citizens must look at the history and how the island was able to bounce back after these crises.
So if we look and see what did St. Vincent do to recover back then, it will certainly help us in terms of recovering now. And there's certainly lessons that can be learned. And in fact, there are new opportunities that we have now that we didn't have then. So for example, one of the things that happened back in 1902 is that the botanic gardens played a huge role in the recovery of the forestry and agriculture sector, because they said, well, sugar has been decimated, so let us look at new crops. And the botanic station played a huge role in looking to new crops. That's when Sea Island cotton really got going, and the cocoa sector as well. So they said, this is time to replant. And I think that's very instructive, because what we're seeing now is there's a lot of money and aid flowing into the country. And this is absolutely critical, and we're so grateful for that. But that aid is aimed at meeting our immediate needs. But sooner or later, we have to start looking at how are we going to create jobs and help those persons who've lost livestock and lost their farm.
The SVG Developmental Fund Executive Director said that the distribution of seeds and seedlings, which was done after the 1902 volcanic eruption, is very important in rebuilding the economy, noting that there is a new opportunity with carbon credits.
Credits you can now sell to make money, because the forest is very important in terms of sequestering carbon. So there's some amazing environmental opportunities that St. Vincent now has. We've lost a third or a quarter of our forest, and we need to come up with a management plan to reforest the hills. But in doing so, we can actually attract a lot of money into the country, and some of that money can be used to actually help the persons in the red zones who need income support and job creation in the short term.
Mitchell further noted that though the eruption of La Soufrière volcano brought hardship to the land, it is a treasure and it is an opportunity for the country to take all the negatives and make them positives.
For example, back in 2012, the National Trust would have worked to make sure that La Soufrière National Park gets shortlisted on the UNESCO World Heritage Site. And it's now listed as a national park in the UNESCO World Heritage Site, but it hasn't been listed locally as a as a national park. It absolutely has to be. Even if it's not safe to climb the volcano for another 3 years, there's nothing stopping us making it a national park now, because it is a part of who we are. It is a part of our identity. It causes us pain. It causes us joy. But there are opportunities there, and there is money. There is money in the green economy that is going to be coming into St. Vincent to help us rebuild our forests. And we have to find a way to ensure that that money not just rebuilds forests, but creates jobs for persons, particularly those in the red zones who've experienced displacement and hardship.
Another problem that is affecting the economy is the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Social commentator and member of the SVG Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Stephen Chokim, said with the poor vaccination rate in the country, the tourism sector and the business community will continue to feel the pinch.
Get COVID under control. Then we will have no tourism, and we will not have as high a demand either for the demand of agriculture. So, I mean, they go hand in hand, and we shouldn't fool ourselves about that. The business sector is hurting, and it's going to continue to hurt, particularly given our extremely poor vaccination rates in this country. Right? We keep deluding ourselves into thinking that if we don't get vaccinated, our life is going to continue being as normal. And as I like to say, we have decisions to make, and there's consequences that come from those decisions. Consequences come from actions, and they come from non-actions. We will have serious consequences to bear. Right? We have COVID now appearing in the shelters. Right? These people are going to go back home at some point. Tourists are not going to come here. Supermarkets are not going to do well. Hotels are going to be down. Taxi drivers will not make a living. Right? But all the money in the world is here now. All the international donors are here, donating and helping and whatever. So we'll get the people back. But what will they go back to exactly?
And VINLEC today announced that it will forgive the charges for electricity consumed by customers from Belial to Richmond and those of Montyoung for the billing period March to May 2021. The company's communication manager, Tamara Job-Sprott, said the suspension of bills for residents in the red and orange zone communities is due to the post-volcanic eruption environment.
And this, of course, is in light of the challenges faced by persons in those communities. Additionally, there is an extension of the 10% discount on all electricity bills for the months of June, July, and August. This discount really is intended to lend support to customers in the COVID-19 post-volcanic eruption environment.
Meanwhile, customers who receive bills with extended billing days for the month of April have over the past 2 weeks been receiving bills and are seeing a reduction in the number of billing days reflected on their May bills. For that group of customers, the number of billing days on the May bills is smaller than the average number because the meter reading schedule has returned to normal.
So, for example, customers who are billed between 40 and 44 days will see bills between 16 and 19 days. And the customers who are billed between 35 and 40 days will see bills 20 to 27 days. Furthermore, our customers who had estimated bills in April, what they will see on this May bill is the actual reading.
It was a busy weekend for lahars or mud flows, particularly on the leeward side of the island. This was noted by lead scientist monitoring Lasso Freire volcano, Lloyd Lynch. Weather forecasters did predict rainfall for St. Vincent and the Grenadines for the weekend, which brought the lahars.
We had, let me see, 11 lahar signals. They occur on both sides, the east and the west. Actually, I think more on the west. It's difficult to pinpoint which valleys they occurred in.
Okay.
Usually, I think the clouds that brings the rain, they condense usually after they are weakened after passing over the mountain range. So I think you have more precipitation on the western side.
Meanwhile, the lead monitoring scientist has recommended the installation of early warning systems for lahars here at SVG. He said with the hurricane season, more lahars or mud flows can be expected, noting that their monitoring can play an important role in warning people and saving lives, especially in the red zone communities. The scientist, however, stated that it will require lots of preparation and instruments installed to effectively monitor lahars.
It's not a matter of just putting a few instruments on the slope of the volcano. That alone won't cut it. You need the monitoring component, which comprises of your cameras, your acoustic flow monitors, that is narrow bandwidth seismic sensors.
Yes.
Some weather stations to measure the level of precipitation, and the communication component to get the warning and alerts out to the population at risk. Then there is a hazard component where you do some sort of assessment of the risk, which involves mapping of the volcanic deposits, consulting with the weather, the Met Office, to look at the average precipitation per annum, for example.
The UWI SRC scientists said that it will take some time to put the monitoring systems in place, noting that they have had issues installing instruments for the past 3 weeks. Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, who was on the radio program with the scientists, was not too pleased to learn about the delay.
It's going on 3 weeks, and looking for permission to put stations on 3 sites. One in Upper Walibu, one in an area we call Briggs Mountain, which is west of Briggs, and another site up at Fitzhughes. And we still cannot get permission as yet. So you have these impediments that it's difficult to quantify.
But Lloyd.
Yes, PM.
I don't know who you are seeking the permission from, because it's the first time I know that you all are seeking this permission. Because there's a the Minister of Lands and Physical Planning happens to be the acting Prime Minister at the moment.
Yeah.
And land surveys is under him. Now, if there is a bureaucratic impediment, the political directorate doesn't know about that. So I don't know about it, and I am the minister responsible for disaster preparedness.
The Prime Minister, however, welcomed the recommendation by the scientists and said that his government may have to look at a capital budget in order for the Lahar's early warning systems to be realized.
To put together a consultant putting together with everybody concerned, a capital project.
Yeah.
And let us find out what is the cost with the various agencies which I was talking to you about. The suggestion which you made in relation to getting a comprehensive program to deal with Lahars with all the various elements is a very good one. And all I was saying is that we could start with a blank slate, but we have to put it within the context, with urgency. But we have ahead of us the rainy season now with Lahars. Next year rainy season, I said we hear that by now. That this thing could the Lahars resulting from the material coming out from the volcanic eruption may take us into 2023 and even beyond.
Right.
So we have to get cracking on it like yesterday. So I think we're on the same page with it.
9 new COVID-19 cases were reported from samples processed on Friday and Saturday. 8 of the 9 cases were reported from 173 samples processed on Friday, June 4, 2021, resulting in a positivity rate of 4.6%. The National Emergency Management Organization, NEMO, said the cases are linked to schools, hubs, and evacuees in shelters. The 9th case for the weekend was reported from 155 samples processed on Saturday, June 5, 2021, resulting in a positivity rate of 0.6%, with 2 new recoveries noted over the reporting period. 218 cases are currently active and 12 persons with COVID-19 have died. 2,077 cases of COVID-19 and 1,847 recoveries have been recorded in St. Vincent and the Grenadines since March 2020. The public is urged to continue to use masks, sanitize, physically distance, and get vaccinated to reduce the spread of COVID-19 here in SVG. And Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves continues to lament about the low vaccination rate in SVG. Speaking on radio today, the Prime Minister called on persons in the tourism sector and public servants, especially nurses, to take the jab.
And the nurses and the doctors. But I see I'm informed that 75% of the doctors are not militant people. Memorial have taken the vaccine. But just under 20% of the nurses down there and 25% of the nurses in the communities, they have to show an example by taking the vaccine. I hear some of them say they're waiting on Sputnik, but the best vaccine is the vaccine that's available at hand. That's the one that is. And critical areas of the country employers are going to insist legally and properly that they take the vaccine, for instance, in the tourism areas. And the Port Authority will have to do the same thing, and the Airport Authority. And people at immigration will do the same thing.
Meanwhile, President of the SVG Teachers Union, Oswald Robinson, said the request for students to be tested is being pushed by individual principals and is not the official position of the Ministry of Education or the SVG Teachers Union.
The Ministry of Education would have said in a recent meeting with principals that it is not mandatory for testing nor for vaccination. But, sometimes there are some principals who want to do their own thing, and when they do their own thing, they're on their own. That is why they're asking for permission. But I have read some of these notes or requests, and some of them are not really making a request. Some of them are implying that if you want your child to come back face-to-face, you must present a negative test. or show that you're vaccinated. Then you're trying to say, in order to go to school now, that is a requirement. That's the message. And a lot of parents are not happy about that. And their teachers are also parents who are not comfortable with you requesting people to do this and do that, because your medical records are strictly confidential between you and your doctor, and the teachers union uphold that position.
Since the Learning Hub started their operations, there have been the discovery of a few cases of COVID-19 in some of these hubs. Residents are reminded to only buy food from consumers and business places with an approved food handler's license from the Public Health Department of the Ministry of Health, and to buy meat products that have been inspected by environmental officers. The encouragement comes from Environmental Health Officer in the Ministry of Health, Wellness and the Environment, Marchant Scotland, as the country joins the United Nations in observing World Food Safety Day. World Food Safety Day, which is celebrated under the theme Safe Food Today for a Healthier Tomorrow, seeks to draw attention and inspire action to help prevent, detect and manage foodborne risks, contributing to food security, human health, economic prosperity, market access, tourism and sustainable development.
Food safety refers to the handling, preparing and storing food in a way to best reduce the risk of persons becoming sick from foodborne illnesses. Food safety has a critical role in ensuring that food stays safe at every stage of the food chain, all the way from the farm to the table, including processing, storage, distribution to consumption. Having safe food gives an immediate long-term benefit to people, animals, the economy, and the planet as a whole.
The government has a critical role to play in ensuring that food that comes into the country is safe to eat. Scotland, who is also assigned to the Kingston port, said that this is done through the Public Health Department.
When food is imported, the officers will conduct an inspection of the containers with food items to make sure that the food entering the country is wholesome and safe to eat. Secondly, we can grow our own food. As the saying goes, grow what you eat and eat what you grow. Thirdly, business operators must ensure that the food they are selling to the public is safe to eat. Fourthly, consumers need to learn about safe and healthy food in order to make proper choices when buying and selecting food. Last but not least, there must be teamwork to ensure food safety. This is not just the responsibility of the government, but everyone, including our consumers, has a role to play, from the farm to the table, to ensure the food we consume is safe and healthy to consume.
With the ongoing volcano disaster relief efforts on ground and personal barrels and packages coming into the country, the Environmental Health Officer is advising residents to be careful with what they consume.
Okay, as I said, not just government agencies are responsible, but consumers themselves. We cannot be everywhere. For example, for persons who have their personal boxes and barrels coming in, they too can check for safety in their food items, especially the canned products. So they have the expiry date. You can note what expiry date is there. There are dented tins. If they are badly dented, you know not to consume them. And also, when food are packed with other, like cleaning agents in these barrels and containers, sometimes the food take up the food is being tainted. It's like sometimes you might have rice smelling like detergent. So these are some of the things that consumers out there can.
In some police news now, the SVG police force is investigating the circumstances surrounding the death of Jimak Patchnut Jackson, a 29-year-old laborer of Camden Park, that occurred on Friday evening. The police say preliminary investigations revealed that the deceased was shot about his body with a gun and was pronounced dead at the scene by the district medical officer. They said the motive surrounding the shooting incident is unknown at the moment and that a post-mortem examination will be conducted on the body. Jackson's death marks the 18th homicide in SVG for 2021. Persons with information pertaining to this investigation are asked to contact the Assistant Commissioner in charge of crimes at telephone number 1784-4561339 or the officer in charge of the Criminal Investigations Department or Major Crimes Unit at telephone number 1784-4561810 or any police station or police officer you are comfortable with. All information, the police say, will be treated confidentially. Investigations into the incident are ongoing. And the police have arrested and charged Richie James, a 35-year-old farmer of Calder Ridge, with 2 counts of wounding. The accused man allegedly unlawfully and maliciously wounded a 25-year-old conductor of the same address by stabbing him on the left side of his head with a pair of scissors. In addition, James was further charged with also unlawfully and maliciously wounding a 23-year-old unemployed of the same address by stabbing her on her left breast and left shoulder with a pair of scissors. Both incidents occurred at Little Tokyo, Kingston on September 24th last year. The accused is expected to appear before the magistrate court to answer the charges. In another matter, the police have arrested and charged Winfield Sam, a 37-year-old self-employed of Lower Kittels, with wounding. The police say the accused unlawfully and maliciously wounded a 30-year-old unemployed of Redemption Sharps by beating her about her body with a cutlass and a broomstick at Lower Kittels on Saturday, June 5th, 2021. The accused is also expected to appear before the magistrate court to answer to the charge.